Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk.
Good evening and welcome. It's Talk to Solomon time. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Stan Solomon, my co-host,
Chief Steve.
Police Chief retired Steve Davis, and of course we have from the illustrious state of Missouri, Dave Weinbaum, a writer for Jewish World Review, an entrepreneur, and an all-around, and I do mean all-around, good guy. Dave, how are you tonight?
That's very sweet of you. I'm very fine, Stan. Skinny Stan over there, trying to look like he's 33 years old, and you're doing a good job of it.
Well, thank you very much.
Is there a shortage of shoe polish out there where you live, or what?
No, but there is a shortage of makeup, but that's because of that 55-gallon drum that you're using.
I'm waiting.
All right. And our special guest, my friend Dr. Alan Keyes. Alan, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay, Stan.
We can't razzmatazz you, but at any rate, Alan, there's so many serious events today. There is, it's an election night. There's some talk that the President of the United States, running unopposed for all practical purposes in his party, may in fact not garner a majority in the state of Texas. And he only got like 50 some odd percent in Tennessee and in Kentucky and in, I think it was Arkansas. What, if anything, is that saying?
Well, I think it says that those of us who said, and I said this all along, I believe that when people in this country got to know who Barack Obama was, understood his background, his life, his commitment to Marxist-Leninism and socialism, and the fact that not only in terms of views and in terms of the policies that he had advocated and followed in his public life and career, whether as a community organizer or when he was in the Illinois legislature. I mean, this is a hard-nosed, dyed-in-the-wool leftist who pulled the wool over some people's eyes, including, by the way, the eyes of many people in the so-called Republican leadership, who thought, oh, he sounds so moderate and so forth and so on. There's nothing moderate about him. And there has been nothing moderate at all in any way about his administration. He has been pushing hard to try to achieve as much in the way of socialist imposition as people let him get away with. And I think that the result has been two things. One, many people in the country, as they became aware of this, as they cut through the lies that have been perpetrated upon them by the media, by the politicians, by all of these people, through a combination, I think, of cynical, selfish interest and cowardice, they understood who he was, and they had only one desire. And it's the desire people have when their stomach gets all roiled up from a really bad meal. And what's the desire you have, Stan? To find a place where you can vomit it up. And that's what they have been waiting for. I think that many people are just longing for that opportunity in November to register their resounding no to what this man stands for. And I understand why. Why on earth would we want to be pushed, pulled, dragged, and shoved by whatever means into adopting the very approaches that have destroyed the prospects of countries in all different parts of the world and blighted the economic prospects in Europe to the point where they have had a continual difficulty with stagnation and now hang, of course, on the border of bankruptcy. Well, this man has brought us to the border of bankruptcy, and people are sick to death of both his hardline socialist commitments and I think of the future that it portends. So I'm not at all surprised at this, Stan. I've been anticipating it and expecting it. And it's why, as you probably noticed, I've concentrated a good deal of my fire, because I was early on trying to warn people before they put this man in office who he was. And when the others were lying and when they were covering up and when they refused to look at the issue of his eligibility, at the issue of his communism, at the issue of his deep commitment to abortion that encompassed and countenanced the killing of fully born children, I was telling the truth. And being ostracized and being batted about by all and ridiculed by all and sundry, including, I say it again, a lot of these leaders now on the GOP side who are trying to make hay while the sun shines for their political advantage, but who weren't willing to share the truth with the American people just for the sake of that truth and the future of the country. This is what bothers me. And on the other hand, I've also been trying to forewarn people that we can't adopt this view that lets the devil with his mask off, which is what Obama is, then lead us to feel so desperate that we'll put any old person in office there, including the devil with his mask on, see? Because that doesn't get you out of trouble. And that, unfortunately, Stan, I think, is the fate for which the nation is right now headed if people don't wake up right now to this danger. Because we've got one guy who's really bad, and we need to vote him out. And we're being offered an alternative that, when you look at the record, promises to be just as bad or worse in terms of actually getting into office with a label on that will put people back to sleep. See, the most dangerous thing we can face is not that we have to fight socialism. It's that we will go to sleep and stop fighting it because somebody says he's a Republican and he's a conservative and he's lying about it. That's the greatest danger we face right now. And that danger hasn't gone anywhere, Stan. I think it's still looming over the country, and we're headed toward a situation in November where we may very well end up walking down that socialist road, and instead of fighting it tooth and nail, go to sleep and wake up in a country that we will be sorry we live in.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of truth in what you say. I want to talk about some realities that are out there. In the state of New York, over the last 10 years, under the control of the Democrats and liberals and leftists and Obama lights compared to Obama, they've had a net loss of 3.4 million residents, but more importantly, they've had a net loss of $45 billion in revenue that would have come from those 3.4 million residents who left. And they're not unique. California is going through the same thing. High-tax states are seeing that. I'm going to go to David, who's a business person and pays taxes and deals with those realities on a daily basis. David, is America waking up, and will we start to say no to bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger governments, more and more and more expensive governments, knowing that they're killing the goose that laid the golden egg?
First of all, I want to say hello to Dr. Keys. It's always a pleasure to see you, Dr. Keys. When are you coming back to my neck of the woods?
Hi, Dave. I'm not sure. Always enjoy doing so, though, so I hope I get the chance. It's good to see you.
Give me a call next time, and I'll even buy you dinner and an adult beverage, maybe.
I'll look forward to doing that.
Anyhow, as to I agree with everything Alan said, and I want to compliment him on the fact that he was probably the first one who was telling the truth about Barack Obama and was cast aside because of it. But he was telling the truth. He vetted Barack Obama, and that's what they do to you, especially if you don't have anybody else doing it. And he was probably the first in our side of the aisle that went and did it. Yeah, I do disagree slightly with you on Romney. I don't think it's too early to cast him as the same as Barack Obama. I think we need to support him, and we need to keep him tied to his promises to repeal Obamacare, to start the Keystone Pipeline, to do all the things that he said he was going to do. But I can't see this guy as a rote communist, as Barack Obama seems to be. Now, as to the vetting process, there's a bad sign coming out of Romney right now. He refuses to talk about what's coming out of the Breitbart revelations about Barack Obama and his sycophants trying to bribe Reverend Wright into not talking. And that Barack Obama had a secret meeting with Reverend Wright and asked him not to speak. This is before the 2008 election. This is a serious problem. And it's what, in my opinion, got John McCain not elected, because he wouldn't talk about the facts about Barack Obama and his connections and his socialist and communist ties. So this has to be made clear to our candidates right now, and it's the duty of every single one of us that know better these days to do our own vetting of the president even if it's talking on talk shows, if you're calling a show, if you're running a show, if you're Stan Solomon spouting out, you need to reveal this to people. You need to keep talking about it. And when confronted with an Obama lie, like he's a non-spender now, all of a sudden, you need to go against this. You cannot remain silent when this man lies, which means you're going to be doing a lot of talking.
Chief?
Well, this is a combination issue, and it's a historical fact that when taxes are reduced, the government brings in more tax revenue. So if the left was really interested in gaining more tax revenue, they would lower taxes, but they're not. They've proven that they're more interested in penalizing Americans and creating class warfare rather than actually improving anything in our country. Also, the GOP, as Dave mentioned, when we put up candidates like John McCain, it's going to be a never-ending battle to try and replace what they got with something we got. And so the GOP, though, historically now for many, many, many years has put up moderate candidates in an effort to what they believe will be to attract liberal votes, which was never going to happen. But unless that stops, we're going to continue to put in people that we're not enthusiastic about, and that someday will be overtaken by the socialist side of the left party.
Now, addressing that issue, and of course, everyone wants to say that race is not an issue, or that the other side is bringing race into it, but I firmly believe that now is race an issue, race wars are literally upon us. And they're covering this up. There's not one, there's not 10, there's not 100. There have been thousands of incidents of attacks that are based on race, and almost, not all, but almost all of them have been whites attacked by blacks. And yet we're not allowed to talk about that. In most cases, law enforcement won't even tell you the truth. We have now Holder, who I would tell you is not an honest person, but that's my opinion, who is meeting with black pastors to brief them on how to convince their flock to vote and support Barack Obama, even in the face of the overwhelming majority of blacks being against gay marriage, the overwhelming majority of blacks being against abortion on demand, the overwhelming majority of blacks being against the elimination of a belief in God and understanding of God's blessing on this country, and the supposed separation, which doesn't exist, but that the left always talks about, of church and state. Alan, I know that it'll take you 3 days, but if you could limit it to, 10 minutes, could you address this issue?
Sorry. Actually, Stan, it won't take very long. Because step number one, the great problem I have is that I don't understand why it is that we now have to put up with this scam party system that has Barack Obama over there betraying all of these things that folks in the black community believe. And he always did, by the way. The folks who are taking seriously his supposed conversion on gay marriage, I don't know. I just feel a kind of pity for them. Because if they were able to look at the facts, look at his record, look at his pronouncements, and still believe the nonsense he spoke when he said that he believed in a traditional family, then that's their own fault. This is the problem with folks. They close their eyes. I sent around a tweet today that, because I'd stumbled across one of those old Three Stooges routines, where I think it's Larry or somebody gets his eyes poked, and then he's reacting, and he says, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. And his buddies say, why can't you see it? He says, my eyes are closed. And that's the way I feel these days. All these people who couldn't see what Barack Obama was. You know why? Because they shut their eyes. They shut them tight. They shut their ears and refused to listen. And I can't help it. I feel the same way about folks who are being duped by Romney. There's nothing to prove in Romney's case. He has been a committed leftist. He implemented socialism in Massachusetts in the form of Romney Care. He single-handedly introduced gay marriage and forced the justices of the peace to perform gay marriages on the threat of being fired by him. That was not said by the Massachusetts court. It was not forced by the Massachusetts court. They had no constitutional power in Massachusetts to force anything. And so you talk to me about, well, what are they going to do? Here's Obama, and he believes in gay marriage. I'm sorry, Romney acts as if he believes in gay marriage. And if what he did in Massachusetts is the action of somebody who doesn't believe in gay marriage, then I suppose that y'all are sitting back expecting that he will use presidential power to impose gay marriage. Because that's what he did in Massachusetts. And then the day after, he'll say, oh, I strongly support the traditional family. Are we nuts? I think there are a lot of people in this country now, Republicans, Democrats, black folks, white folks, they're walking around with their eyes tightly shut. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to see the truth. And meanwhile, in combination, these parties that are now in the service of an elite faction that has abandoned God, abandoned the Declaration, abandoned the understanding of liberty based upon the idea that our rights come from God, they're sitting there chuckling and saying, we got them coming and going. No matter which of these jokers they vote for, they're going to get our version of the future. And in it, there will be no God, and there will be no liberty, and there will be no family based on natural rights, and there will be licentiousness, followed by the imposition of an order with the iron hand of government, keeping people in line because they've lost all moral sense and character. That's what they're pushing us toward. And either way, you accept this two-party scam, that's the future you're going to get. And sitting there and saying, oh, I hope we can persuade him. No, you can't. He's fooling you. You're being duped. You're being conned. You're not going to con the con artist. He's already conned you. And how many times must we go through this as a people? And people keep saying, well, we're going to do this. I've heard this before. I've heard this song 3 and 4 times in the course of my lifetime. People backing folks who were not standing for the things they believed in the hope that they were going to get them to do something they weren't going to do. As a result, we tread water on almost every important issue under the sun while the Bushes were in office, because they weren't really committed to rolling back the socialism that has been destroying the country. And as a result, what did we get? We got a decade in which that failure to act then gave license to people in the Republican side and the Democrat side to spend like drunken fools until they have pushed this country to the point of bankruptcy. That didn't just happen because, oh, we put these good people in and they didn't do enough. It happened because we were listening to con artists who had no intention whatsoever of respecting the basic tenets of moral conservatism, fiscal conservatism, institutional and constitutional conservatism. They mouth the words, but they don't believe in them, and they do not follow through. And I think this is the last con job. I think you're fooling yourselves if you think that we're going to be going through this 2 and 3 times in the elections to come. If we don't wake up now, then the American Republic has run its course. We'll keep going through the motions for a few election cycles. I'm not even sure of that. But the substance of our liberty is already dead if we don't revive it right now. And so I can't just narrow my little scope into the parameters that people want to talk about now. Because the usual understanding, they always stampede blacks into the Democrats' arms. But if you don't mind my saying so, Stan, we have the counterpart of them stampeding Christian believers and moral conservatives into the arms of unacceptable Republican alternatives to the same degree. So we have a whole bunch of people in this country who, as I've said on my blog repeatedly, are without representation. People who believe in God, believe in the Constitution, believe in the Declaration, believe in unalienable rights, believe in the rights that we have, like the Second Amendment, to defend ourselves, believe in the responsibilities that we have as the foundation of those rights before God, to take care of our family and our community, and to respect those responsibilities in what we do. People who believe this, but they have no representatives, because both these parties have sold us out to godless socialism. And if we don't stop pretending that it's otherwise, then we're lost.
David, you want to follow that up?
Yeah, as soon as I've made my reservations for Costa Rica and I'm beginning to pack because it seems like it's hopeless. I understand the doctor, but you know, I mean, Ronald Reagan was labeled as a stupid Hollywood liberal at one time, union guy, and he seemed to straighten things out for a while, even though he was lied to by the Democrats, who, when he agreed to cut taxes, they agreed to stop spending, and as you know, that didn't happen. So, you know, I hope I hope the good doctor is wrong. I understand his frustration. I don't understand what the alternative is at this point, because we're going to have an election. It's going to be between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney.
I disagree. I have laid out on my blog, if folks would go read it, what George Washington thought we ought to do, because it's in the Constitution. Yeah, he thought we ought to use the Electoral College process for its real purpose. Not to serve partisan factional interests, but to elect a majority of electors who will follow the will and desire of the people. The party system is not essential to the presidential election. And in point of fact, the general election cycle hasn't even started yet. And if people wake up now, they can still organize themselves to put on the ballots around the country slates of electors that are actually committed to finding and choosing and putting in office a president who will reflect their commitment to God and the country and the Constitution, its border security, and all the things that people really want. They don't have to live with the tyranny of these factions. They're living with it because they've been brainwashed into believing, oh, there's no other way. That's a lie. And I've laid out a course of action that follows the way that the founders put right in front of us. But people don't read the Constitution. They claim to support it, and then they go on. For instance, most of them still believe that we're going to elect the president on November the 6th. According to the Constitution, we do not elect the president on November 6th. There is no general vote of the people that elects the president at all, according to the Constitution. The President of the United States is elected by electors in what we have come to call the Electoral College. And that means that if you put the right kind of electors into that Electoral College, they are then empowered by the Constitution to find a president that corresponds to the will of the people, not the manipulative media, not the party bosses, not the bureaucratic bosses, but the people themselves directly can elect those who will then follow their will. That's still in the Constitution. It still works that way. But we've allowed these people to fool us and brainwash us into ignoring what's right in front of our eyes. And I think it's kind of sad because we have the wherewithal. The Tea Party movement has created the grassroots structures that are needed. And instead of using them to become part of the stupid charade we've been going through, people ought to wake up and use them as Washington and the founders thought they should be used. And that, of course, means looking at the Constitution, reading it according to its terms, and following it, which means that the choice people have to make is to make sure we get the right kind of electors in the Electoral College who will do what the country requires, not what these party bosses are requiring, so they can complete the destruction of our country.
Alan, let me ask you now to be more specific, because I see the look on Dave's face, and it's on my face and on Chief's face. Where do you put the names? Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, I want Chief Steve to be one of the electors. Does that go on the ballot? Who picks those electors?
The electors, by the way, who picks them now? Do you know the answer to that? Who picks the electors?
Aren't they picked by the state, by the parties?
They are picked. That's not by the state. Parties are not government.
I know, but aren't they picked?
Private associations.
So many by the.
The electors are actually picked by candidates on the basis of who's done them good, who's done this or that in their campaigns. They are also picked by parties and party bosses on the same partisan basis of who's done what for whom. And if you were to follow, and you have to go read, does nobody any longer actually sit down, study the Constitution, and think out the tactics that are needed to follow it? Because that's what I've done. And the tactic that's needed to follow it here is very simple. You have what are called favorite son or favorite daughter slates. Those slates are then chosen. The people who are actually on the ballot will be chosen by grassroots mechanisms, Tea Party gatherings that then lead to a state gathering of people chosen by those Tea Party gatherings, who then put together a slate of people pledged and committed to restoring the Constitution and our respect for the Declaration, what are called the organic laws of the United States. Okay? And those are people that you know, people that are from the grassroots, not people you hear about from the lying media, but people you can go and touch and feel and talk to before you lift them up to make this important choice. And then you put on the ballot the names of folks, one from your state, one from outside your state, who are just placeholders. They're not running for president. because the actual process of selecting the president is going to be conducted by the electors in consultation with their grassroots people at home. They will go through the same process a search committee would go through if they were looking for the CEO of a company. We're absolutely familiar with how this process is supposed to work. It's done all the time in all our major institutions. But we've been brainwashed into turning the whole thing over to these factions that George Washington condemned, by the way. The very kinds of parties we are now subject to, he condemned, and he predicted that they would lead to the very outcome we have. Combinations and associations of people acting in their own interest to rape and loot the country until finally they impose a tyranny upon it for their selfish interests and in disregard of the common good of the people. We can stop this. But, you know, in 5 minutes here, I'm not even going to try to explain it. People should go read, ponder, digest. That's what Americans once were able to do. Even before people were literate. They would sit down, somebody would read to them works like the Federalist Papers, and they'd talk it through. They'd talk it out.
Now that's
we weren't people who sat in front of a television screen eating up pablum from a bunch of jokers who are just lying to us continually every day. They still used their own brains. And it didn't matter that they didn't go to college and didn't have high school degrees. They had common sense and they applied it.
All right, Dr. Keys, this is at Loyal to Liberty. Dr. Keys, it's at Loyal to Liberty is where you find this?
It's been up there for the last week. I finished the whole series in the course of the last week and a half. It's called Restoring Representation. And if you go from the beginning to the end, it lays out the background, the thinking, looks at the Constitution, and then outlines the kind of process that would allow the people of this country to directly take back the choice of president so that we wouldn't be faced with this false, phony choice of evils that end up destroying our country.
All right. We're going to take a quick break.
Here's a question.
Dave, hold on, because we're going to take a break. We'll be right back, and then we'll go right back into it. This is Talk to Solomon. Do you like being healthy? I do. In fact, this product, which I've been taking for years now, is absolutely the answer. Now, you may not believe it, but I'm actually 21, plus tax, of course. This product has 146 different healthful nutrients in it, and it's liquid, so it's bioavailable. It tastes great, and it's sugar-free. 1 ounce of Sonic Life each day will help you to maintain and enhance your health. It's the kind of a gift, well, that you'll thank your mom for, your husband for, your wife for, your kids for. Whoever you give it to, they're going to say thank you. And you are going to enjoy the benefits of having all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the nutrients your body needs in one very reasonably priced product. Just go to cpnlive.com and everything's right there. You'll be able to read all the ingredients. The price is right there, a flat price delivered to your door anywhere in the United States of America. Sonic Life is a gift, a great gift. Give it to yourself. I do. Do you like to eat? I do. We all run to the store if we're hungry, right? Well, there are times when that doesn't work. And for those times, and it may be for an hour, and it may be for a day, and it may be for a week, who knows, God's in charge, you need to have quality food. Alpine Air, that's what this is, quality food. It has extended shelf life, and it tastes great. You should store what you eat and eat what you store. Just go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for the Alpine Air foods. It's incredibly reasonable. It's actually a way to save money. Alpine Air has quality food that's going to be there when you need it. It's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Alpine Air at cpnlive.com. Click on the icon and protect your family. You have a computer, if you're alive today, which means you have a hard drive, which means it's going to break down. Mosey, the backup people, for thousands, for Stan, for thousands of people, for tens of thousands of people, is simply common sense. You go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and sign up. It's just a few dollars a month. Let me tell you something. We had a break-in. They stole our whole computer. You know what? When they take the computer, you can't recover anything, but we had Mosey. We had the backup. We were able to restore everything simply by buying another computer. CPNLive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and give yourself common sense, peace of mind, great value, the best thing you've ever done. Sooner or later, it's going to be Mosey, the backup people.